Hey everybody, so it's Sunday, which means Games of the Week, where I look at the upcoming week in the NHL and pick out what I think will be the best games this week. And there are quite a few this week. This is a very good week for the NHL and the NHL schedule. There's some really, really nice matchups this week. Some great games to watch. So let's get into it. I don't want this video to be too long. I may not talk about each game as much as I normally would because I have quite a few to get through here. But let's start with today, the 17th, Sunday. We have the New York Rangers in Pittsburgh this afternoon. Obviously division rivalry, longtime rivals, the Rangers and Penguins, so that should be a fun game. Even though the Rangers, the Rangers they're behind Pittsburgh by a decent amount, but it's not like the Rangers are the worst team or anything. And then Pittsburgh, obviously fighting for a playoff spot, in playoff position. So that should be a fun game. Then later we have St. Louis versus Minnesota. Huge Central Division matchup there. St. Louis has been an absolute wagon recently. They are on fire like you wouldn't believe, pulling themselves out of near the bottom of the Central Division up into being not only a playoff team, a strong playoff team at this point. And then you have Minnesota, who is fighting for their playoff lives, so that should be a really intense game and a really fun game to watch. Tomorrow, Monday, we have Vegas versus Colorado. That's Colorado. This is a huge, huge week for the Colorado Avalanche. They have been downright awful lately. And they've fallen well out of a playoff spot and really have their playoff chances are getting lower and lower by the day. They haven't just fallen off, they've fallen off a cliff. So this is a huge week for the Colorado Avalanche. They have got to pull out some wins against very good competition. You're going to see Colorado a decent amount throughout this video because they need to pull off some big-time wins against big-time competition if they want to pull back into playoff contention, and it starts on Monday with Vegas. Tuesday, we have Nashville versus Dallas, Central Division matchup. Playoff teams should be a real fun one. Those teams don't like each other very much, so Nashville and Dallas should be a really intense, fun game to watch. The 20th, we have Winnipeg versus Colorado. Again, Colorado, for the same reason, this is a huge week for them. Winnipeg, best team in the Central. Colorado has got to pull out some wins here, and that will be a really intense, really tough game. Should be a fun one to watch. And also that night, we have the New York Islanders versus Calgary Flames. And I don't usually put cross-conference games on here, but two teams that are very, very good. Calgary's one of the best teams in the West. The Islanders are one of the best teams in the East, leading the Metro Division. That should be a really fun game and a good game between two very good teams. Moving on, we have the 21st. We have Washington versus Toronto. I mean, there's not much to say about that. That's a great matchup. Buffalo versus Tampa Bay. Buffalo is in a very similar situation to the Colorado Avalanche. I would say Buffalo is the Colorado of the East. They got off to a very good start to the season. They were in the playoffs. They looked like a playoff team, and then they fell off an absolute cliff. And Buffalo now has to pull off some serious wins if they want to get back into playoff contention. So beating a team like Tampa Bay would be massive for the Sabres. We'll see if it's probably not going to happen, but we'll see. That's going to be a really big game. And St. Louis versus Dallas. Again, Central Division matchup. Teams fighting for playoff spots and playoff position. St. Louis and Dallas both look like playoff teams at this point. St. Louis could definitely overtake Dallas and take that third spot in the Central without easily if they continue to play the way that they have been over the last few weeks. Moving on to the 22nd, Friday, we have Winnipeg versus Vegas. That's just, a rematch of the conference final, Western Conference final from last season. Two very, very good teams. Vegas isn't as good this year as they were last year, but still a good team out west, and then Winnipeg leading the Central, one of the best teams in the league. That should be a really fun matchup and a great game to watch. And then finally, On Saturday, the 23rd, there are a bunch of great games on the 23rd. What a day for hockey. We have Washington versus Buffalo. Again, like I said about Buffalo, they have some huge games that they need to pull points out of against top competition if they want to pull back into playoff contention. Colorado versus Nashville, same thing with them, just different conference. They've fallen off a cliff. They have got to start pulling points against good teams or their playoff chances are done. So Colorado against Nashville, that is a huge game for the Avalanche. And it should be a really, really fun one to watch. Those teams met in the playoffs last year. A lot of bad blood between the Avalanche and Predators. That will be a really intense, fun game to watch. Montreal versus Toronto. I mean, those are two teams in the East that certainly both look like playoff teams at this point and could potentially meet in the first round of the playoffs. I don't know necessarily that they will. I really think it's going to be Boston versus Toronto in the first round again. But Montreal could pull up into that third spot, and then it would be Montreal versus Toronto. Canadian rivals, original 6 rivals. Just incredible matchup there between the Maple Leafs and Canadiens. And then finally, on Saturday, we have the Stadium Series game between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. That should be an absolute blast to watch. Pittsburgh and Philly played last week. I streamed during the game last week. Hopefully, we'll be streaming the Stadium Series game. I don't know for sure, but hopefully will be. That's the plan at this point, anyway. It's still a little far out for me to know for sure, but hopefully will be. And I mean, it's Penguins Flyers. That rivalry certainly has cooled off over the past couple of seasons. It's not like it was back 5-6 years ago, but it's still Penguins Flyers. It's the Battle of Pennsylvania. It's an outdoor game, and it's a big game. Philly, I don't think Philly has much of a chance to make the playoffs at this point, but they don't think that. They think they can pull it off. They think they can pull themselves out of the basement and get back into a playoff spot. So this is a huge game for the Flyers. It's a huge game for Pittsburgh, who all of a sudden has Carolina right on their butts in the standings, and Pittsburgh's not guaranteed a playoff spot at this point. They've got Carolina chasing them, and they're right on that bubble in a wild card spot. So, that's a huge game for them as well, and that should just be really fun to watch. So, those are the games of the week for this week in the NHL. There are quite a few of them. There are a lot of great games this week. This is a fantastic week for the NHL and should be a lot of fun to watch. I know I'm going to be watching as many of those games as I can, and I hope that you guys do the same because it's going to be some really, really good hockey, and we are getting down to crunch time here. It's getting closer and closer to playoffs. We're getting to almost a month till the playoffs, and it's really the home stretch of the season at this point. So, with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.